Welcome back to Epic Exchanges. It is November, and I am super thrilled to welcome my friend Kelly Neff to the podcast to share her story. And I'm not even going to share anything about it. I'm going to let Kelly introduce herself. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Kelly Neff, and I am a certified coach, speaker, trainer, and disc behavioral consultant with Maxwell Leadership Team. And I'm also a certified Enneagram Motions of the Soul Practitioner. So I teach individuals, groups, and organizations the strategies and the leadership skills that I have personally learned and used to be able to find hope and experience healing and freedom in many areas of my life. I believe that there are really four keys that have helped me be successful on my journey so far. And I would say those four things are personal growth. I think personal growth and challenging yourself to stretch and grow is a huge key component of success. I would also say that your support system, a positive support system, is such a huge part of that as well. For me personally, my faith has been a huge part of that foundation, and also finding some life purpose has been huge for me. I think all four of those things have been really the keys or the foundation for me that has helped me to survive and really to thrive even after experiencing multiple tragic losses in my life.
Wow.
So,
Well, thank you. I think that sets the stage really well for the story you're going to share
all
with us.
right.
So I'm going to pass it over to you and just let you go with your story.
All right. So, the topic that I really wanted to share about today is about grief. And for me, grief has been a bigger part of my life than I ever expected at this point in my life. I don't know if your audience will be familiar with the Peanuts comic strip written by Charles Schulz and his main character, Charlie Brown, who just seemed like nothing went right for him in his life. He always experienced a lot of difficulties. And he would have this exclamation after something would happen. He would say, "Good grief." And so I think that's true. So often when things don't go our way, we say, "Good grief." But for me, those two words, seeing those two words, I don't know what it was that drew me to those words and questioning. I'm a curious person, but questioning, can good and grief go together? Like, is there anything good about grief? And so, with that in mind, I want to share a little bit of my story with you and some of the things that I have learned on my grief journey. So, it's been a little more than 12 years ago. It was September 7th, 2011. I lost my oldest son, Tommy, to suicide. And I will tell you that in the hours and the days and the weeks that followed, I really was just wondering, with everything in me, would my life ever be the same? Would I ever be able to laugh again? Would I ever be happy again? Would I ever experience joy again? And then fast forward 7 years from losing my son, I found myself asking those same questions again because we found out my husband had cancer and he died 4 months later. So for me, in my grieving experiences, both of my losses happened to be sudden and unexpected. And so I think for me to describe how I felt after both of those would be kind of like, when you get the wind knocked out of you. When that happens, sometimes you land flat on your back and your lungs are like burning inside you, and you need to breathe and you want to gasp for air, but you can't. And you just have that hollow, empty, burning feeling. That's the best way I can describe how I felt after both of those losses. Both losses were different and I grieved differently, but I kind of had that same feeling. But so, what I want to share today is that, would my life ever be the same again? I can tell you that 12 years later, I laugh often. I'm happier than I've ever been. And I'm experiencing joy on a deeper level than I ever imagined was possible. And so you might say, how can that be? Is she saying that she never struggles? Does that mean that I'm over it? Definitely not. Here is the hard truth. I still struggle every single day. And am I over it? Absolutely not, because you never get over the loss of losing somebody that you love. For anyone who's lost someone they love, you understand that your world just comes crashing in on you and it wrecks you. And you're left behind with these deep scars and nasty wounds. And sometimes it even paralyzes you. So I would say that without a doubt, um, I will walk the rest of my days with a limp. Like, I'm not walking the same way I walked before my losses because my life has changed and there's no getting around that fact. I would tell you that in the aftermath of each loss, something that I experienced was this fog. And I had this difficult time focusing my mind and thinking clearly. Like, I just couldn't do it. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't do it. Often I felt sick to my stomach. Like, I just had this nauseous feeling that I literally felt like I could vomit when these waves of sadness would just come over me. And my counselor called some of these times ambushes, and I thought that was a great way to put it. So those are those times like when you see something or you hear something or you even taste something or smell something that kind of just brings back that flood of memories that just kind of wash over you. And when that happens, especially like when you find yourself out in public and something like that happens unexpectedly, you're like struggling to push those emotions down and keep them under wraps. So I would say that grief is like exhausting, like nothing else. It is exhausting. And not only does it bring like intense pain, but also, in my experience, it can bring guilt and shame right along with it. And I say that because in the days after losing my son, I began struggling with the if onlys. If only I had been a better mother. If only I hadn't have left that night. And so those if onlys, they would have eaten me alive if I had let them. So what I found myself having to do was daily, sometimes even moment by moment, recognizing when those thoughts were coming, those if only thoughts, and saying as soon as they came, no, I'm not going to let myself go down that path mentally. And I had to intentionally choose to think on something positive instead. So, what I learned about grief is that grief can really stir up a lot of emotions and feelings like fear and doubt and anxiety, hopelessness, loneliness, depression, all of, that long list of things. Grief can lead you to very dark places, and grieving is really hard. And so it just brings me back to my question, is there anything good about grief? And there's a quote by a guy, I really like a lot of his quotes. His name's Viktor Frankl, and he says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think that is so fitting with grief and with loss, because when you experience a loss, you're in a situation that you had no control over and that you cannot change. And you're kind of left with being challenged to change yourself because there's nothing else that you can control other than changing yourself so that you can walk forward. But so for me, wrestling through my pain and my sorrow, man, it's changed me significantly. Like, it's given me a very different perspective than I had before on life. It's even given me a newfound purpose for my life, like being here and sharing what I'm sharing with you guys today. I feel like it's something that I'm called to do because it's impacted me in such a profound way. And so it might sound strange, but I think that for me, it's been in some of my darkest places of brokenness that I have actually seen the brightest light. And that may sound really strange and it might not make any sense. But for me, in my darkest places, that's when my vision has been made clearer to be able to focus on the things that are truly important in life. And so, no, I am not the same, but it's made me bolder. It's made me stronger. It's made me fiercer. And those are words that I never, ever would have imagined speaking about myself or embodying. So, even though I would never want to experience those things again, I'm also extremely aware that I would not be the person sitting here with you today that I am if I had not experienced those things that I experienced.
Wow, thank you. So much hope in your story and where you've come to, obviously. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being here. I have a few questions I'd love to ask you. And the first one is really along those lines of, I love that quote, and I'm going to pull it out that you just said, the darkest places you found the brightest lights. Even with so much tragic loss, no parent should ever lose a child, or should outlive a child. And that same situation has happened in my family prior to my generation, but seeing how my grandfather in particular dealt with it through life. So even with such tragic loss and immense overwhelming grief, what are some of the good things that you have found in the midst of it?
So that's an interesting thing. I actually was just sort of challenged to come up with an Enneagram. I wanted to come up with a tool for the things that I have learned, the things that I have personally found in my quest to find out if there's anything good in grief. And for me, I came up with this Enneagram of grief. And so the G stands for grow. It stands for grow. And what I mean by that is grow by looking for the good in grief, grow by looking for the lessons that are to be found in grief and then apply them. So that's the G. Then the R is to reevaluate what really matters most in life. And that's something you'll hear so many people say often after they've lost someone, is that it literally causes you recognize that life is short, and it causes you to reevaluate your life and figure out what really matters to you. So the G is for grow, the R is for reevaluate. And when we begin reevaluating, it really helps us to identify. So there's your I. Identify your values and the areas and the ways that you want to improve. And then the E would be engage your pain, because you can't run from your pain. You can try, but you can't outrun your pain. Really, truly, I think the only way to find healing is to engage it and to walk through it. And by engaging it and walking through it, that's when you start to experience the healing. And then I think once you experience the healing, it gives you the power to really master your grief instead of it controlling you, because in the beginning, it kind of does control you unless you grow and find ways of healing to be able to master it instead. So we've got the G is grow, we've got the R is reevaluate, the I is identify your values, the E is engage the pain, and the F is find purpose in your pain. And that might sound strange to some folks, but I will tell you that this particular one has been really a gift that was unexpected. So finding purpose in your pain, healing to the place where you can then use what you've learned to help someone else when they're experiencing something similar, has really brought a level of healing in ways that I never expected. It's brought more than just purpose. I would tell you, it makes me a little emotional to say, but it gives you a sense of significance in your life. And that is something that is incredibly powerful. And there's really, honestly, I don't feel like there's anything else like it in the healing journey I've been on since finding purpose in my pain by helping other people with it. And that can look different. That can look, using your story is important. Your story matters, and other people need to hear your story. Whether you feel called like I do to use it as a platform to speak and to do workshops and to help people, or whether that's just being willing to show up when you're at work or when you're at the ball field with your kid and someone is experiencing something and you're willing to share your story and walk alongside them. It doesn't really matter, what way you use it. It's your story that's important. And that would be what I would say is grief, grow, reevaluate, identify, engage, and find purpose.
Wow, you are so speaking my language because because this is what I try to help people realize is that their story is important, but deeper than that is we all have to do the work, particularly with the difficult stories in our lives, and they might not all be grief centered, but so many of the things you said echo how I work with people. It's finding their story. It's finding the healing in the story, but also finding that purpose, that passion, the gifts that come with that difficult experience, that difficult time. So with that in mind, I would love to know one or two of the gifts that you can grab onto, that you can identify that have come out of these huge losses in your life. And the way I kind of say them to the people I work with is it's those things that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Mhm. I would tell you this, and this was another thing that's unexpected for me in choosing to, well, let me just back up a little bit. So, I grew up in a home that was filled with domestic violence and abuse of all kinds on like a daily basis. And so as a kid, I learned right away um, some survival skills. And when you learn those survival skills, they kind of become like second nature and they become instinct to the place where you don't even recognize that you're just walking right down that path again. And those were so ingrained in me to run from my pain, to hide from my pain, to stuff my pain, to build walls, all of that kind of thing. And when you're in that kind of situation, you also learn to read people really well because you want to read how do you alter your behavior so that you're not setting off World War III, right? And so when you do that, you kind of lose yourself because you're really trying to figure out who you are supposed to be, who everyone else wants you to be. And so for me, what was unexpected about choosing for the first time to walk through my pain instead of running from it, and that actually came at the time. It came the day after I lost my son. I remember sitting at my dining room table, literally making the decision. I actually said out loud, Tommy, I'm promising you that I'm going to walk through my pain. I'm not going to run from it this time. I'm not going to avoid it. And when I began to do that and I began to heal, I found that I actually learned to know who I am for the first time in my life, who I was created to be. And it gave me confidence and it gave me courage and strength that I never knew that I had in there. I never knew what I liked. I was always trying to figure out what I was supposed to be. And so I would tell you that freedom is probably the word that comes to my mind. Freedom. That is the gift. Freedom from all of the junk from my past that I never would have guessed. I would have found freedom from that, and healing and walking, being willing to walk through the pain of loss helped me heal things that I never would have seen were connected.
Wow. And most people wouldn't come to that conclusion, right? Like people listening to your story, had you not said that you found freedom and given the Max story even there, wouldn't have thought, oh, from loss, this is a gift that you would have got from it. So that
Right.
I love how unexpected things like that can be.
Mhm.
And they're not necessarily directly related to that specific difficult time, which I love as well, because we learn things all in different ways, and things can skip generations. They can skip times and phases of our life, all the kind of different contexts that we think that cause effect. It's not always that. Sometimes it's cause, and effect back, right? Like,
It's true. It's true. Yeah, it makes me think about, and I might get this wrong, but I heard a long time ago, it was when I was first grieving, I heard a story about, when a forest fire comes through and it goes through and it burns down the forest, that a lot of the pine cones or whatever the seeds, I might be saying the wrong thing. The only way that they ever open to be able to be planted is when they're heated up. And so it just kind of makes me think the same about when we're going through a tragic loss. It's kind of like we're in the fire, we're in the heat. And I think it breaks us open and lets us find healing in places that maybe we didn't even know we needed healing, or we knew, but we didn't want to be broken open. So we kept tightly closed. I don't know if that makes any sense.
whoever wants to be broken open.
Who wants to be broken open?
I don't think we necessarily sign up for that, but
Nope.
it happens to all
Nope.
of us. So you've mentioned your acronym, grief. Do you have any other tools for anyone who might be dealing with their own grief, or first steps that if people are ready to kind of like how do I get through this? How do I start the
Mhm.
healing? How do I even deal?
Yep. So I would say, I talk about taking steps forward and what do those steps look like and how big do those steps need to be. I think for me, in my first loss, losing my son, I don't know why exactly, but it became really clear that I had two options, that I could continue in my old ways and continue to try to run and stuff it, or I could embrace it and I could learn how to live differently in my new reality. And so that's what I chose to do. And so for me, there were days that, I didn't really feel like taking a step. There were days that I didn't care to take a step, didn't want to take a step. And I think that there are some days that the step is maybe choosing to stay in bed because you need that day to rest. I think the key is not staying there. The key is, and I set a limit for myself. One of my limits was, my boundaries was not to allow myself to do that more than 2 days in a row. And so then I would have to take another step. And so some of my steps, this is a list of some of my steps. Your steps might look different. And they're tiny. When I talk about tiny, I mean a tiny step. Like a baby step might have looked like getting out of bed that day. A baby step might have looked like making my bed that day, because if I made the bed, that meant I couldn't be in it, right? Um, a small step could be taking a hot bath or taking a shower. It could be choosing to eat something good, something that would be nourishing for my body that day, instead of eating, a pan of brownies or a quart of ice cream. This could be something simple, like literally just opening the door, stepping outside onto the deck, and breathing in on purpose some big breaths of fresh air, even if it's just for a few minutes. Going on a walk, listening to music, spending time with a friend. And when I say spending time with a friend, it could be like sitting in silence with a friend or crying with a friend. Um, I put read a book on here because I've heard a lot of people say for them, reading a book was a lifesaver. For me, and I put this on here because I wanted to share this in case anyone else experiences what I did. I couldn't read. Like I mentioned, that I couldn't have mental clarity, couldn't focus, I couldn't comprehend, like I just couldn't do it. For me, I couldn't read. But I just wanted to say, if that's you, it's okay, because it will come back. It will. You're just in a time right now. So if other people can read and you can't, don't worry, it will come back. Maybe it's just something simple, like there's a couple things that I was taught through counseling that were huge for me. And one of them, they talk about practicing being present, because when you're grieving, a lot of times you can focus on the past or you can focus on fears for the future. And so something simple is literally like sitting in your chair, taking off your socks and shoes and putting your feet on the ground and just kind of like crinkling your toes, moving your feet back and forth. It's great if you could do it on carpet or even on the grass outdoors. There's something that happens that triggers in your brain when you do that, that kind of resets you and helps you bring you back to the present. And that's a very important practice to do. And then I would say the last one for me that was absolutely crucial. After I lost my son, I had full on anxiety attacks. They were rooted in fear, which just gripped me, that I was going to lose another child or that I would lose another one to suicide. And when those attacks came, like I couldn't breathe. And so learning some basic breathing exercises were crucial because they really helped me to regain my composure, and they helped to de-escalate that anxiety attack and get me back to functioning normally. And I still use those breathing exercises today when I start recognizing and feeling myself tense up or get anxious about something. So I think important thing is just to take small steps of any kind. They don't have to be big steps, small ones of any kind, and just keep taking them.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Quickly, you touched on purpose, and I would love to know that from you what you see as your purpose that has come out of all of this.
I believe that the thing that I'm called to is definitely mental health related, but it's more than that. I think that things that I've come to understand through grieving and through healing from the grief is that I believe we're created with physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and they're all connected. And you cannot, we like to, as Americans, we like to try to compartmentalize all of them, but you can't. And they are all intertwined. And I think for me, the thing that I'm called to share is to share with people the things that I have learned through what I've gone through, so that these steps and these tools can be used for other people to find that glimmer of hope that gets them to continue to take steps, to find a little bit of healing, to take more steps, to get more healing, to experience freedom, and to find purpose and significance in all of it. That's incredibly important to me. And I think the reason why that's the focus for me, um, when my son first passed and I lost him to suicide, I couldn't understand why a guy that had everything to live for would do that. Like, that was, it went against his nature. Like, he was a person who loved life. He, out of my 4 kids, was the one who probably was the most persevering. Um, so trying to understand why that was, and to be so disappointed that our prevention today is looking for red flags. Because as much as I've learned about suicide prevention and looking for red flags, even if I knew all of those things, I don't know that I would have recognized it still. Not everybody gives those big red flags. He didn't. And so that left me feeling frustrated and even angry that I want to do something that, in my mind, is truly prevention. And that is giving people the tools and helping equip them so that when they face difficult circumstances, they have these tools to hold on to, kind of like handholds when you're climbing a big mountain, so that hopefully they never get to a crisis. So my impact, you may never see that on numbers of lessening, the number of people who complete suicide, but that's okay for me, because I need to give them something that I feel is going to be the thing that they need, the things that maybe my son needed, that maybe would have kept him from that crisis situation. So that's a long answer to what you just asked me. Sorry.
It all comes down to contribution and giving back and trying to prevent someone else from experiencing what you've experienced.
Yes.
So it's all very purposeful and very positive. Um, if people want to find you, and if they want more information and to know more about what you're doing and support you in some way, how can they find you?
So they can find me at kellyneffspeaks.com. That's my website right now. I am actually in the process of creating a nonprofit called TOM, after my son's name, and it stands for Together Overcoming Mountains. Don't have a website for that yet, but be looking out for that. That's coming soon. We're working on building a framework of mental health help resources for people. So that's things to come. But kellyneffspeaks.com.
I love that. Okay, one fun question just to kind of wrap up.
Okay.
If someone were going to write a book or produce a movie based on your story, what would it be called?
It would be called My New Girl Groove.
Sorry, say that again.
My New Girl Groove.
Okay.
I'm
I
a
like
person,
it.
I love to dance. And for me, the tagline would be from skewed views, because that's what I used to live with, was skewed views, to ruby red shoes. Because you know how Dorothy wore those slippers in the Wizard of Oz? She wore those slippers the whole freaking time. She just didn't know how to use them. She didn't know the power they had. And for me, with my faith, I believe that God has given me the keys already to be living a life of abundance here on earth. I just have to use the keys that He's already given me. And I feel like that's what I'm learning, and that's what I want to give to people. So I want to go from skewed views to ruby red shoes. And so for me, it's My New Girl Groove. Yep.
I love that. It just, it brings joy. It's a joyful title. And what a great way to finish. An episode on good grief is with joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's been such a pleasure.
Same. Thank you.